Hello, podcast listener. You are listening to the only podcast that shares with you real life, astonishing rags to riches stories of actual real estate agents who've gone from broke to big-time ballers. Buckle in and prepare for another wild ride of astonishing rags to riches real estate success stories with your host, Aaron Kiwi Franklin.
To me, in my opinion, the most important part is I actually implemented the advice. And so, like the neighborhood that I lived in, I live in a nice neighborhood. I still live in the same house, actually. And I started farming that neighborhood. So I started a neighborhood newsletter. I started door knocking to deliver that newsletter just to introduce myself. I started having community events in my neighborhood just so that I became just more and more familiar. My very first listing came from my neighborhood newsletter. Our sons had gone to kindergarten together, so she recognized my name and said, "Hey, I remember her. Let's call her. We want to sell our house." And then I ended up selling them a house 3 houses up from mine.
It wasn't long ago that Amanda Todd was absolutely everywhere and the poster child for success in real estate. But the problem was she was miserable and her rocket ship ride to historic fame was crashing down around her. Amazingly, she's only been in the business 5.5 years. But anyone who's been in real estate during this time knows it's been a real roller coaster. But Amanda has seen the highest of highs, growing a massive team quickly and winning every award under the sun, speaking on every stage across the country, but then having to deal with a devastating divorce and a fight for her life. But like the old saying goes, you can't keep a good person down, and she's back, but with a very different and more meaningful focus. There are just so many life lessons in this episode from the super mom who's done it all, and for anyone who just thinks money and fame will make you happy. So before we jump into Amanda's story, here's just a quick word from our sponsor.
Hi, this is Tristan O'Mata, and this episode is brought to you by Lab Coat Agents, the largest Facebook real estate community in the world, where we bring innovation through education. Visit us at www.labcoatagents.com.
I want to welcome to the show Amanda Todd. I've been trying to get you on as a guest for a while, so I'm very excited. How are you, Amanda?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Kiwi?
I'm good. Everyone's been saying, get Amanda, get Amanda, get Amanda. You know, you've actually been a client of ours at Wailopa for a long time. I've seen how incredibly successful, you've been in the real estate business. But I've also been hearing whispers and different things from people and going, oh my God, Amanda's just dealing with some crazy stuff. That's why we haven't seen her for a while. And I'm like, what sort of crazy stuff? No, well, you should talk to her. So, the whole objective of this podcast is really, so many people put out there on social media just how amazing their lives are. Look at my car, look at my house, look at all the BS, right?
Right.
And there's so much struggle that comes with being successful. And I think, I've met you a few times. You're just such a strong person. I've heard you going through these struggles. So I'm just really interested to hear how you've been dealing with these, what you've been telling yourself, your secrets to success and dealing with tough times. This is a rags to riches podcast. I mean, I'm just also curious, have you ever actually been poor, like broke? Or have you just been dealing with like some really, really tough times and sort of going up and down the sort of roller coaster?
Oh, all of it. So I guess probably the best place to start is starting at the very beginning and how I even got into the business.
Please.
So I, in my previous life, was an Air Force wife. I lived all over the country. I raised 3 tiny little kids. Their dad is a pilot and he was gone a lot. And then when he and I decided to part ways, I'd been a stay-at-home mom for almost 10 years. And now I needed to figure out how to support myself and my kids. And I was absolutely determined I was not going to be your stereotypical single mom living in a 2-bedroom apartment, living on child support, working a minimum wage job, or putting my kids in daycare because it was really important to me to be a stay-at-home mom. And so I didn't want to sacrifice that quality of life that my kids had always enjoyed. My kids had always enjoyed me on field trips and bringing things into their classes and, making costumes for this and that. And me always being the one dropping off and picking them up at school. I mean, I wanted to keep life as normal as I possibly could. So I had my real estate license, but I'd never sold a single house. And so, yeah, let me tell you, it's really scary when you've got $2,500 in the bank and a $2,300 a month house payment. And you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But I closed from the time he moved out, I closed my first 2 deals on the same day, 6 weeks later.
So how long ago was this, and sort of how old were you?
That was 5.5 years ago. That was in 2014, and we're October 2019 right now, to put it, into perspective. And so, yeah, not that long ago at all. So yeah, scary, super, super scary. And I remembered saying to, and actually the person who encouraged me to get my license in the first place, I said, I just want to sell 1 house a month, no big deal. And he looked at me and he said, you realize that's more than most agents do. And I was just shocked. I said, most agents don't close a deal a month. And he goes, no, your average agent closes 3 to 4 houses per year. And like my jaw just hit the floor. I was like, huh? Like that doesn't, like, why even practice real estate if that's all you're going to do? I didn't understand how difficult it was to generate leads. I didn't understand how difficult it was to kickstart a business. And so I learned to appreciate that very quickly.
Yeah. So did you have a mentor? Did you have some friends in the business? I mean, what allowed you to sort of learn the business so quickly and be so successful at such an right out of the gate? I know the timing was amazing. We can talk about that a little bit. You did have that to your advantage.
I did.
You've got to have a lot of other things as well. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So no, I didn't really have a mentor per se. I was in a really small brokerage at the time, and the broker really spent some time to give me some good advice on how to build a business. And to me, in my opinion, the most important part is I actually implemented the advice. And so like the neighborhood that I lived in, I live in a nice neighborhood. I still live in the same house actually. And I started farming that neighborhood. So I started a neighborhood newsletter. I started door knocking to deliver that newsletter just to introduce myself. I started having community events in my neighborhood just so that I became just more and more familiar. My very first listing came from my neighborhood newsletter. Our sons had gone to kindergarten together, so she recognized my name and said, hey, I remember her. Let's call her. We want to sell our house. And then I ended up selling them a house 3 houses up from mine. So they're my neighbors now. So, I mean, just doing that. And then my second listing, I actually got at the open house that I held for my first listing. And because again, I had made myself the neighborhood specialist, these people came into my open house and said, yeah, we're looking at selling our house. We just want to move into something bigger. And so I just was chatting with them. And I said, well, do you have an agent that you're working with? They're like, oh, we met with somebody the other day. And so I said, okay, I don't want to step on any toes. Just curious. I make it a point to be aware of what's for sale in the neighborhood. How much are you guys listing for? And they told me. And because I had made it such a point to be completely aware of pricing in our neighborhood, I said, oh my gosh. I said, that's actually really undervalued for your house. I said, have you signed anything with this agent? Because I just want to make sure that you're actually selling your house for as much as you could. And they're like, no, we actually just met with him once. We haven't signed anything. They said, will you come over and talk to us? I said, absolutely. So I ran home and did a CMA after the open house and showed them that this guy was going to underprice their house by like $30,000. And again, I wasn't trying to be slimy, but because I knew statistics in my neighborhood, I'd made myself the neighborhood expert. I was able to be of value to them and actually sold their house for even more than I thought I was going to be able to sell their house for, just because it was, like you said, the right time. This stuff was just climbing. And just, it was a snowball effect. The gap between 0 deals and your first deal, I really think is the biggest gap as an agent. So if you can get that momentum going, it's huge.
So year one, you're a full-time agent, right? You didn't go part-time with anything.
Nope.
You went straight into it and just rolled the dice and said, I'm doing this.
I did. I said, I'm betting on myself.
Roughly how many houses did you sell in that first year? Do you remember?
That first year, the first calendar year, 2014, I think I did 23 transactions from May to end of December.
And that sort of gave you a lot of confidence to go forward, knowing that, all right, I made the right decision here, and you're
Right.
just full steam.
Yeah. And it is really confidence building to start closing deals and go, oh, hey, I can do this. I'm actually pretty good at this. And you're just building your knowledge base, and then you're just that much more knowledgeable and able to help people that much better.
Yeah, what advice do you give? Because I imagine those first few deals, you've never really sold any houses before. I mean, excuse my English, but you're kind of shitting yourself a little bit and going, holy crap, what if they ask me this? What if this happens? But you just wing it. You just got to go forward, right?
Right. And so I got really good at saying, I'm not sure about the answer to that. Let me find out, because this job carries a lot of liability. So you really don't want to BS people and give an answer that you're really not sure about. But I was able to project enough confidence. And I think that's the most important thing that new agents really struggle with is they look like kind of bumbling idiots for them. I mean, that's not very nice and not very politically correct, but I mean, it really is true. You can tell in someone's voice when they lack confidence. You can tell in the answers they give. And so I was able to say, you know what? I'm not sure about the answer to that. And I could even say, I think it's this, but I want to verify. I would check and then immediately get back to them. I think that's the biggest downfall in our industry is lack of follow through from people. If you say you're going to do something, do it. That's it. Actually, funny story. I had an appraiser call me the other day to schedule to appraise one of my listings. And I answered the phone and he laughed. He goes, oh my gosh, I didn't expect to get a hold of you. Hang on, which property of yours am I calling about? And I laughed and I said, yeah, I'm one of the few agents that actually answers my phone. He goes, no, actually, I should have known better, because he said, I don't know if you remember me, but he said, I really feel like every time I call you, you answer your phone or you call me right back. And he said, I've called you and asked you for help on appraisals before. I've called you. And he said, I don't understand why realtors don't answer their phones. And I said, well, that's how you sell a lot of houses, is you get back to people. He goes, well, and I think a lot of people think when they do sell a lot of houses, that gives them an excuse not to answer their phone. So follow through. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is that I get comments from clients all the time. Oh my gosh, you're so responsive. You get right back to me. And I'm like, yeah, it's my job too. But yet something so simple as that doesn't happen frequently.
Yeah. No, I see it all the time as well. It's insane. So year one, you're off to a great start. At what stage do you sort of level up and you break off into your own gig? Because I know you're Amanda Todd now. Your name is everywhere. So obviously you went out on your own and you start building a team. How long did it take you to sort of make that transition?
Oh gosh, I started building my team just over a year into the business.
Oh.
And I mean, I always was a solo agent. I didn't start out on a team and I didn't really even know what teams were. I didn't even understand the value of having an assistant. I remember the first time I hired an employee. That was honestly probably the most scary thing, because to me, I was like, okay, it's not just my livelihood on the line, but I've got to make sure that there's money in the bank every month to make payroll. And backing up, I actually remember when I incorporated in the very, very, very beginning, when I started closing all these deals, my broker came into my office and he said, please tell me you have a really good CPA. And I said, well, yeah, I do. And he said, you need to make a corporation right now. He said, you're going to get killed on taxes if you don't file a corporation or file for a corporation. So I had my CPA form an S Corp for me like 5 months into the business because I didn't know. And so here's the thing that I will tell a new agent is surround yourself with people who are a whole lot smarter than you, who understand all of this, and who are willing to impart their wisdom, their knowledge, their experience to you and implement it. Because to me, when people have come to me and asked me for advice now at this point, or, asked to shadow me or whatever it is, and then they're at home sleeping in till 10 o'clock every morning and not doing anything, like, to me, that's insulting. My time's worth a lot, and I'm happy to share it and impart of my knowledge, my experience. And so make sure when you're a new agent and you're asking for that, that you're paying it forward by implementing it, by not wasting the time of the person who shared their time and their experience with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. So let's say you are a new agent and you're in an area and you don't know that many people. Are there any groups you'd recommend or any coaching you would recommend? I mean, where would you look for that information or that support?
Well, I'm a really big part of lab coat agents. I haven't been as active in the last several months as I've had so much going on personally, but I'm a huge believer in groups like that. However, you can get 90 million great ideas. And again, if you never implement them, or we're really great in this industry at a shiny object, and we're really good at going, oh my gosh, I just got a $20,000 commission check, and poof, it's gone because we think that we're going to buy 20 magic pills that are shiny objects that are going to all of a sudden make us all this more money. But again, if we're not really sitting down and utilizing them, it doesn't matter. You're just going to blow through and you're going to be living commission check to commission check. So back to your question, I would say, be involved in your office. Be involved in your office meetings. Choose a few people. And again, like I said, ask the top producing agents. Ask them if you can just even listen in on them or host an open house with them or something like that. Because if you are around these people who are top producers, it's a different language that you speak. It's not, I'm doing one deal a month. I think I would die at this point if I only did one deal a month, because I do have overhead. I do have a lot of expenses that I have to keep up, but also just my mental well-being. I'm a goer, I'm a doer, I'm a driver. And so when you get to that level of being used to that, you never want to go back from it. But make sure that you are not only implementing the advice they're giving you, but you're not spreading yourself too thin, that you're taking 3 or 4 or 5 pieces of the advice and implementing them regularly, constantly, being consistent. And I feel like consistency is kind of a cliche word that's used over and over again in our industry, but it's real. I mean, that's what earns you the amount of business. It's being consistently good, because then you don't live on a roller coaster of living paycheck to paycheck.
There are a lot of tech companies out there that are trying to get into the commissions of agents, brokers, and teams. YLOPO is squarely in the corner of you, the agent. We put your brand first and help make your life easier. YLOPO is here to automate everything, from lead generation to lead nurture. And now we even automate the lead conversation. We know as agents you're incredibly busy, and your time and your money are your most precious commodities. It's YLOPO's job to get you a really big ROI. We enable you to dominate digital marketing in your local market. YLOPO is the future of real estate tech.
So you bring up an interesting point. Another thing I've seen as a sort of a trending sort of something that is a lot of successful agents have in common is they time block so they can be consistent. So every day from this hour to this hour, they'll call or they'll do farming, they'll do something, and they have a calendar with everything blocked out so that they force themselves to be consistent. I mean, have you done or worked with anything similar? Yeah.
And the thing that I would add to that, not just in time blocking, but is starting your morning extremely early. And so many people go, oh, I'm a night owl, I could never do that. Well, it's a choice. I'm a really big Darren Hardy fan. Love Darren Hardy. He wrote The Compound Effect. He has his Darren Daily every morning. And he is a really big believer in getting up early too. And he had a really good analogy. He said, well, if you lived in California and you moved to the East Coast, you'd be getting up 3 hours earlier anyways. Like, it's just a decision. It's a choice you make. I sleep with my alarm clock in my bathroom so that or not my alarm clock, my phone, which is my alarm. But so it makes me get up, get out of bed to turn my alarm off, and then I'm up. And I get up between 4 and 4:30 every morning, because that's when the world is quiet. That's when the distractions are at a minimum. And I'm obviously not going to be calling and texting clients at 4:30 in the morning, but that's my time. That's my time for my own personal development. That's when I go to the gym. That's when I write in my journal. That's when I do my meditation, my affirmations. I'm a really big miracle morning believer. And so when you are setting your day up correctly from the very beginning, it's like your life is like a cell phone battery. You're at your 100% the earliest in the morning. Because, what do? We charge our phone at night before you go to bed. So it's like going to sleep. Your battery is at 100% and your willpower battery is also at its highest first thing in the morning. So that's when I think it's Brian Tracy that said to eat the frog first. So that's when you do your tough things is you do your personal development, you do your workout, because guess what? If you leave your workout for 6:00 at night, people's willpower is gone by then. People are tired by then. That's when I've got clients who are wanting to see houses. I mean, if I get all of my personal stuff done ahead of time and I walk out the door taking my kids to school in the morning and go straight to the office, guess what? I'm sitting in front of my computer and then I'm being productive at 8:30 in the morning after I've dropped off my kids. And a real estate office is sadly a really lonely place at 8:30 in the morning, which means you can get the most done. So yeah, I mean, I live and die by my calendar, and I live and die by waking up early and setting your day up. I don't read my emails then. I don't look at my texts then. I do my personal development stuff, and 8:30 comes, and that's when I'm rolling and I'm responding to emails and I'm, working on my transactions and I'm doing my lead follow-up and all of that kind of stuff. So yes, time blocking is real in order to be consistent.
Yeah. And I know all of this is so true with you, and there's no BS here, because you've also managed, which not many people may know about, to do multiple Ironman triathlons, which is just freaking incredible. I mean, as a mother with three kids, a big business, and doing Ironman triathlons is crazy. So you've got to be incredibly dedicated and time efficient, obviously, to be able to pull that off. So
absolutely. And in fact, when you say time efficient, so I'm remarried now. And my husband was teasing me when we were very first dating. He asked me how long something was going to take me, to do something. And I said, probably about 7 minutes. And he goes, not 5, not 10. And I said, yeah, no, 7. And he's like, okay. And I said, you have to understand, like, my life lives down to the minute. I don't swirl through my Instagram feed constantly. I'm not on Facebook. I couldn't tell you what TV shows are on, what movies are in the theater. And again, that's important to some people. But for me, that is not the top priority in my life. My top priorities in my life are my relationships that are in front of me, my own personal health, and my business. Those are my top priorities. And so you do have to be so efficient with your time. I don't waste any time. Everything I do is fast and to the optimum efficiency. I joke around that I talk fast, I walk fast. Like, everything I do is fast because I just don't have time to be anything but fast. I just don't.
So I want to get back to your story, your journey, and I want to get into sort of the nitty gritty now, the real learning lessons, I think, the tough life lessons that you've been through that you've had to deal with. And I'm just really interested to hear how you've dealt with it, because obviously you're doing great now. You're back on track, but you've been, I don't know what you want to call it, punched in the gut or whatever. They had some big, hurdles to overcome in the last, last year, last 2 years?
Last about 3 years, really.
3 years. So take us back to when things started to go sideways for you. And
right. So my business was getting really big. It was great. And I was juggling a lot I had my kids the majority of the time. Then I had my kids probably about 80% of the time. And so when I didn't have my kids, that's when I would maximize on my work hours. I mean, if there's a weekend I didn't have my kids, there were weekends I held 6 open houses in a weekend, because I knew, again, that I needed to be efficient and maximize on my work time. I wasn't out playing and partying. I was working because I didn't want to work when I had my kids, and at least not be away from them. I could do emails and texts and phone calls and things like that. But about 2 years into my career, I had a big team, really big team. And I also started some expansion teams as well in other cities. And it was overwhelming. It was exhausting. It was making it so I didn't have the time to personally produce. And there's a lot of people who actually want to step out of production. I enjoy producing. I enjoy working one-on-one with my clients. I really enjoy that touch. And I was finding that I was just managing teams, that I wasn't getting to really produce at the level that I wanted to be. And then personal struggles came in. I started going through legal battles with my kid's dad. And oh my gosh, there is truly nothing more exhausting and draining than I've ever been through in my life than going through legal battles. It is truly the most exhausting thing I've ever done. I would rather do an Ironman every day of the week than go through legal battles. It is so draining. It's draining emotionally, it's draining physically. And then in our jobs, we're on stage. We have to go be the business professional. We have to go be the one that's put together, because our clients aren't going to want to hear about our personal struggles. Our clients aren't going to want to hear that we just walked out of a 3-hour-long court hearing. I can't count how many times I've gone straight from court to showing houses or to a listing appointment, because that's how I have to juggle my day. And so that was tough. I went through a lot. I went through a lot of really big growing pains with my team of hiring the wrong people, hiring the wrong agents, hiring the wrong management, having people leave and stab me in the back, or having me feel like, okay, this isn't what I thought it was going to be like getting into it. I mean, at one point, all of my teams combined, I had 32 agents. And that was a lot. I don't have a background in business management. I don't have education in reading a K1 in how to put together a proper P&L. I didn't have any of that. I had to stumble through all of that, because at one point we'd have all this money in the bank, and then it'd be like, wait, where did all that money go? I didn't take home any of that. Like where is this going? I mean, like I was saying before, it's so easy in this business to shiny object. Be like, oh yeah, we've got money in the bank, spend money here, 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 here. But then you turn around and it's gone. And when you're the team leader, when you're the boss, you're the last one taking home money. That gets really scary. When you're over, I mean, there was a point in time where my overhead was like $150,000 a month. A month. Like, I went from being a stay-at-home mom and in a couple of years having an overhead that's more than most of the American population makes in a year per month. That is draining. That is exhausting. I couldn't sleep at night with that, because I mean, it was, I had reserves in the bank, but not 6 months worth. It's just the pressure of that, plus the pressure of dealing with the hard things. I mean, I really took a step back because I got caught up in the numbers. I got caught up in wanting to be, number one here. I mean, there was a point in time, it was 2017. I was the number 17 agent in the state of California for number of closed transactions. Like, that sounds great and amazing and such an accomplishment 3.5 years into my career. And I was miserable. I was stressed. I was, again, fighting legal battles still. It was exhausting. My husband and I were dating then, and I just couldn't give what I wanted to our relationship. Being a mom and a connected mom was my top priority. And so I've ridden the roller coasters. I've ridden the huge production. And I think it's Pat Hyman who calls it your ego, your EGI, your ego gross commission or whatever, because that number can look amazing and great. But what I've learned is the number that I take home means more than any of those numbers. I could close 1,000 deals a year, but if I'm struggling to make my mortgage payment, to what end? Like, what's it worth? And so I really did a lot of introspection, and I really did a lot of just hitting the pause button and going, is this worth all of this? And an amazing man who wanted to marry me, and I kept putting him off, going, yeah, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't even have time to think about a wedding. I don't have time. There's not many men out there like that who stuck around like he did. He hung in there. And I look back at the chaos that my life was. And I was training for Ironmans, and I was doing all of this stuff and getting like 4 hours of sleep per night. And I eat super clean. I'm all about eating really, really, really healthy, but I still wasn't taking care of myself. And now, fast forward, we're 2019. I've scaled my teams way down. I have 2 teams. I have one in St. George, Utah, one in Sacramento area in California. And we produce all the way from the Bay Area, basically to the Nevada border. I am licensed in Nevada, Utah, and California. My husband and I don't even live together. He lives in Las Vegas. But I've scaled it way back. And I'm back to the roots of what is super important. And it's not that I lost those things altogether, but it is really easy to get caught up in the business, in the big numbers. And trust me, I'm the number one person who is pushing to drive, to do better, be bigger, but really scaling it back. Somebody said to me one time, if you can choose between being rich and being famous, choose being rich every day. And then I took it back in and said, okay, what is being rich to me? Is it shushing my kids constantly because I'm on the phone because I'm running? I mean, there were months where we were doing between 40 and 50 transactions in a month. I was constantly shushing my kids on the phone. It was feeling like I could never not take a phone call, except for dinner time. I always kept, the dinner time protected. I, try to spend one-on-one time with each of my kids each day. So that's protected time from phones. But even still, it was that just constant, like, I'm letting my clients down. And so it was really just figuring out, okay, I've done the huge, I'm kind of scaling back down. And it doesn't mean that I won't grow big and be big again, but I'm going to do it way differently. And I've learned that I'm way more profitable when it's small and it's not about being number one. So that was really long in my journey. And there's a lot of gaps in there. But I mean, I always said I'm invincible. My health, I'm young. I'm only 36. My health is great. I'm an Ironman triathlete. I'm recovering from my third surgery in 3 weeks right now, and I still have another one coming in a week. There is a point where we're not invincible. Our bodies do break. They are mortal. So it's figuring out again, what is riches? Is riches having 1,000 transactions in a year, but nothing really quality to show for it in relationships, in your health, in your personal well-being? Or is it, I'm just fine paying my bills and I am really happy to provide a level of service for my clients, and I'm really happy to be the mom that I want to be? What are riches to somebody? And sometimes it takes riding the roller coaster and learning the hard way of what riches aren't to really value what riches are.
Do you feel like now, looking back on, your roller coaster ride, you rushed into it a bit too quickly, or you try to do too much yourself, and then some guidance or some mentorship of someone who had perhaps been through that would have been really, really valuable for you? Or do you still feel like, I'm sure you feel like it's, you wouldn't trade it for anything because you've learned so much.
Right.
But if someone else you could see someone else about to go through the same steps and go, oh, no. Would you give them this advice to slow down? Here's what I recommend. I've been like this, but I would recommend you pump the brakes a little bit because of X, Y, and Z.
I would. And at the same time, there were people out there who tried to give me the advice, and I almost took it as a watch me, I'll prove you wrong type thing. My mom said my very first words when I was a baby were, I do it myself. And so I've always been I'm the exception. And I am super thankful, because I don't know of another single mom who has been able to do what I've been able to do in 5.5 years. And yet I had to learn those hard lessons for myself. And so I think if there was something that I could have learned better and taught myself better, would be actually giving myself more grace. And I was actually just watching what Brene Brown, her special on Netflix the other day. And she said something that really resonated with me. She talked about the difference between fitting in and belonging. And because I was the brand new agent and so young and the single mom, and, I felt like I had all of these things stacked against me, I felt like I was constantly working to fit in, constantly working to prove myself, constantly working to prove that I was as good as anybody else, that I could do it at a level nobody else had. And in many ways, it wasn't even about what anybody else thought. It was proving it to myself. And so learning the difference between fitting in and belonging means you just inherently have your place there. Fitting in means that you are working quadruple time to try to make your place there. And so coming from a place now of experience and credibility, because I can say, hey, I have sold this many houses. I've sold more houses in my 5.5-year career than most agents sell in their entire 20 or 30-year career. Like, that does come from a place of credibility, but I say that for credibility, not for ego. And to me, that's really different. But really feeling like I belong instead of I'm trying to fit in and find that place where to fit in. And I'm having to prove myself over and over again that I belong. I hope that makes sense. So going back, if I saw somebody making the same mistakes, I think I would say, hey, I've been there and I'm happy to be a support for you because it's really hard. A lot of agents are really high Ds, and I think that I'm not alone in saying that if somebody tries to offer me unsolicited advice, I push back. But I think there's a difference in unsolicited advice and offering support. And I feel like the people who offer support, the people who've offered me support in lieu of unsolicited advice in my life, those are the people I actually trust and respect the most, because I don't feel like they're doing it from a place of ego. I don't feel like they're doing it from a place of trying to prove something. I feel like it's actually genuine and real. So if there was someone that I saw that was headed down the same path as me, I think I'd say to them, hey, I've been there. And if you need somebody to just listen when you need to vent and it's super stressful, call me anytime, because I know what that feels like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Are you able to mention the names of some people, like you've sort of have been mentors to you or given you really great advice that are in the industry? Because I think we know a lot of the same people. I'm just curious if any of the people I know may have been in that inner circle.
Oh, yeah, gosh, there's a lot. There's a lot, because that's actually one of the things that I feel really, really blessed with, is that in me working this overtime to prove to myself I was just as good, I was really blessed to be surrounded by what I think are some of the most brilliant brains in the industry that I do call friends, that I feel like I could text and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this. What would you think? First person that comes to mind is my dear friend, Amy Youngren in Toronto. I don't know if you've ever heard her name before. She is amazing she's just an amazing human being in general. She's one of my very dearest friends, but marketing, branding, somebody else who came from nothing to, she has a huge brand in Toronto. G and Howard with my Lopo, good heavens, I can't count how much time G and I have spent on the phone where I'm hatching all these harebrained ideas, and G is so patient and runs with them with me in expansion stuff and things like that. I was coached by Michael Hellickson for a long time. He's a great guy. Ben Kinney, he's brilliant and also just an amazing human being. I, haven't talked to him in a long time, but he's somebody that I feel like I could text and say, hey, the growing pains, you understand this. Like, can I vent to you for a second? And I feel bad that I'm, kind of drawing a blank now on the spot. But there have been so many people that just authentically, and then I have my very best friends here who are in the industry and just love me for who I am, that I've always felt that I belonged, that I didn't need to fit in. And I think that if more people, just in general, as our human race, were more cognizant of allowing people to belong and not forcing people to try to fit in, as the tide rises, all ships rise. Seth Price also, he's somebody that I absolutely adore, that I have spent hours talking to, that he helped me. I mean, he's a branding expert. So when Amanda Todd Group came out big, he's huge to thank for that, because I didn't even want to name my group after myself. And I remember he and I were sitting one day. Where were we? I think we were somewhere on the East Coast. And he and I were sitting together. And I said, Seth, I don't want to name my group after me. It was when I was really launching my team. I said, I don't want to name my group after me because that seems like such ego. And I had a purse sitting on the table, and it was a Kate Spade bag. And he picked up my bag and he said, do you think Kate Spade really has anything to do with this company anymore? No, but it's a story that people can belong to. He said, you have to name your team after you, because nobody else is Amanda Todd. And you have the story of strength and empowerment that people can, especially that women can, that mothers can. And so I've always thought about that I didn't name my group after myself for ego. I named my group after myself because women can, because I did. I was given this mountain to climb so others could see it was possible.
I love it. I love it. That is a great story. Let's dive back a little bit. I'm curious to understand what's going on with these health issues now. And is this a result from your hardworking days, just driving your body, into the ground for those first three years or so? Sound like incredibly stressful. You're doing so much stuff. I mean, what happened? I mean, health-wise, have you been dealing with this?
So, several things. I mean, one, and when I say not taking care of myself like I should be, my 80% is most people's like 150%. I eat zero sugar, zero refined carbs. I eat, very strict, very clean, probably 85% organic. I, exercise like crazy. But the big component that was missing, meditation, visualization, all of that. But the big component that was missing was actually my inner peace. And there is a lot of research that goes, back forever about the mind-body connection with emotions. And because I wasn't processing through the stress well, I was really holding it in and carrying so much that it truly destroyed my body. I just had a hysterectomy at the age of 36. Like, that's not normal. Most people don't have that surgery at that young of an age. I'm battling masses that are precancerous for breast cancer right now. I am about to have surgery on that. I literally dodged a bullet in that the radiologist, as I'm going through scan after scan, said to me, it's a 50-50 chance that it's either cancer. She said, it's 50-50. It's either cancerous or it's precancerous. And she said to me, you're in the breast cancer world now at 36. And I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. So wake up call for me, and thinking I'd been doing everything, but I hadn't, because I hadn't learned to have that inner peace. And so dialing it all back, it's learning, there's what's it called, the serenity prayer, learning to control the things I can, to let go of the things I can't, and to have the wisdom to know the difference between the two. And so it's learning to fight the fight, like I said, for what are riches? What does riches mean to me? Does riches mean to me, great, they're going to write on my headstone when I'm 38 that I was, one of the fastest growing producing realtors in the country? No thanks. I don't want a headstone when I'm 38. Things like that. And so really the health struggles that I'm struggling with are because I thought I had it figured out. I thought I had it dialed in, but really not realizing the health component that goes along with living under duress 24/7. It's a stressful job. It's a stressful industry. And if you're fighting personal stress at the same time with it, something's going to give. It just is. And my body is what started giving.
Yeah, it's so easy, especially in America, just to get caught up in the rat race, isn't it? And with real estate just being such a high flying industry over the last 8 years or so, I can see how you just get caught up in that trap. And it's just, it can chew you up and spit you out. I mean, if you're not careful.
And here's the thing, too. The person that's the next big thing is very fleeting as well. And so, again, going back to, is it better to be rich or to be famous? I'm choosing being rich every single day, because being famous, and I was speaking all over the country, and here's how I did it, and all these great, amazing, fun, exciting, it's a thrill. It's a dopamine hit. It really is. But at the end of the day, there's going to be somebody else who's going to do it better, faster, and they're going to be the next big thing. And then what's left in that? Like, being totally real and authentic and candid, it feels great to be the one that everybody's asking to speak at their conferences and do this interview and that interview. But again, it's fleeting, and it's really, really easy to get caught up in it. And it's really easy when I look back and see how detrimental of an effect that actually had on my production, how detrimental of the fact, I mean, I live in California. There was 1 year where I went back and forth to Florida 3 times in a 2.5-week period, all just for speaking at conferences. That didn't translate to more closed transactions, maybe a few referrals from around the country, things like that. But the amount that it took away from my health, my production, I only scheduled those things on times I didn't have my kids, but still, it still took away from my kids in that I was exhausted and recovering from jumping to that time zone 3 different times in such a short period of time. And those are long flights, and you're not sleeping, and all of that. You have to remember that where you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to a lot of other things. And so don't forget to look at what you're saying no to when you say yes to something. Like, always remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's balance, right? I mean, you just got to have a more balanced life. That's what it comes down to.
And honestly, I think balance actually doesn't exist. I think the whole work-life balance thing actually isn't real, because if you study the human brain, our frontal cortex truly, and I say this with exceptions because moms are pretty good at multitasking, but generally speaking, you can only give devoted attention to one thing at a time. So that isn't balance in, I'm going to do 5 minutes here and 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there. It's, am I making sure that what's in front of me is what should be in front of me all the time? And my husband convinced me to get a Tesla, not because I care about like, oh, I drive a Tesla and the status symbol that comes with that. My husband convinced me to get a Tesla because he's in law enforcement, and he was terrified with how often I was texting or emailing and driving. And he's like, okay, you need a car that's going to, he goes, it's either time to get a Tesla or hire a driver, one of the two, because you're not allowed to text and drive anymore. I never had a car or anything like that, but it's true. We all do it in our industry. We all text and drive. We all, are nose down on our phone when there's something in front of us. And so to say the balance, I don't think it's that. I think it's prioritizing what you're choosing to have in front of you.
Let's wrap this up a little bit. You've had some big life-changing moments. You've learned so much over your very short career. It's amazing to me. It's only been 5.5 years. I mean, holy smoke. What are the big lessons that you're applying today? It sounds like you're learning to say no more and prioritizing where quality time over, just trying to do everything. Can you just wrap up for me some of the big learning lessons that are just, you really want to focus on right now, that's really giving you a lot more peace in your life and feeling a lot more confident moving forward that, okay, I'm in a much better place?
The biggest life lessons that I could say, if I could pass them on to people, are pushing yourself, making sure that you are truly maximizing your potential. And when things start breaking, because they will, because that's also how we grow, is we break and we repair. I mean, it's even how muscles grow. You tear them a little bit to make them stronger. So when things start breaking, because they will, if you truly are pushing yourself at an optimum level, also give yourself grace, but don't fall into being broken. Pick back up and repair it. I read something the other day that said, you're never starting from scratch. You're starting with experience. And so remember that when you have failures, it's not if, when you have failures, that those are growing experiences. And that often things that are repaired and put back together are repaired and put back together stronger than they were originally. And so as far as life lessons, because I've always had my priorities the same of my family, my health, my business, I've always kept those priorities. But if you make sure that when some of those things do fall through the cracks, because we're going to make mistakes, that you pick yourself back up and you don't fall into the failure and stop, that you don't fall into being broken, that you take those experiences and learn from them and just make your life that much better. That's where the joy is going to come from. And one of the things that I struggle with the most is finding joy in the journey. I always think, oh, when I get to this goal, I'm going to be that much happier. When I get to this, when I hit this achievement of this many houses sold, or this weight, or this milestone in a pace on a race, or something like that, that's when I'll be happy. No, what I'm working on now is actually joy in the journey, joy in learning these lessons and having these experiences, joy in saying, thank you for that opportunity to learn from that. That's where I wish I could have understood that 5 years ago. I honestly wouldn't change a lot of things going back, just because I know I'm stubborn. And I know that I only would have learned these life lessons from going through the hard things. So it makes me really thankful for the hard things I have gone through, because I know that the failures always could have been worse than they were. And so then I'm super thankful that the failures didn't break me all the way, but broke me down enough to humble me, to teach me the lessons, and then to help me get back on my feet as a better, stronger person with more experience. That's what I have learned along the way, is that these hard, difficult things are truly for our benefit and for our experience, and to strengthen us and help us become better and stronger.
Yeah. It's the old saying, what doesn't break you makes you stronger, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sums it up. Beautiful. All right. Well, look, I really appreciate you sharing your story. You're an amazing human being, and my mind is spinning, and I can't wait to share this episode with everybody. So I think there's so many, not just young women out there, but men as well, who just get caught up in the rat race. And in real estate is so absorbing, and it's so ego driven and money driven. And I think there's a lot of authentic lessons here that will help people over the long run. So I appreciate you sharing, and thanks again. You're amazing.
Anytime. One of my very favorite quotes is, a flower doesn't look and compare itself to the flowers around it. It just blooms. So figure out who you are, what your riches are, what you want to go after, and just bloom on your own, regardless of what other flowers are doing around you.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great way to finish this.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, thanks again. And good luck with the surgery and stuff coming up. Rest up. Take it slow. Take it easy.
I'm trying.
As much as you can. I know it's hard.
It is.
All right. Thanks, Amanda. See you later.
Bye-bye.
And that concludes another episode. I want to thank you kindly for tuning in, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, if you're able to leave a review, that would mean the world to us. I'd love to hear what you think of the podcast, how we can make it better, and any other guests that you think would be great to have on the show. Take care, everyone.